fix for you. Been a while since we did one of these. Now, if you're not familiar with this one, this is my daughter's car. It's an '05 Buick Lacrosse? Lucerne? What the heck is this thing? It's an '05 Buick Lucerne. Anyway, notice the front brakes are starting to make some noise, and the last couple days, they're actually grinding. So today, we got some front pads and rotors we're going to put on here, and also take a minute to flush the brake system. It's always a good idea, just some regular maintenance, keep that fluid clean and dry. Let's dive into this thing. We'll get going on the front pads and rotors, and then move on to the brake fluid. Hey, while I'm thinking about it, you go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe too, to follow along with all my cool stuff. So you want to start out by, lifting the vehicle, however that is, jacks, blocks of wood, whatever. In my case, I'm using a lift. Pop the wheels off. Again, whatever you got. Get those things out of the way. Let's take a look at what we're working with here. Yeah, those rotors are trashed. And surprise, nothing left on the backside. So go ahead and pop those caliper bolts loose. And when that doesn't work, get a bigger ratchet. Yeah, there we go. They come right out. Slide your pins out. Make sure you note the top one has a little rubber bushing on it. And set those off to the side. Then get your caliper out of the way. It's easier here. You can compress that piston a little bit. Slide the thing right off. Here's the big culprit. And later on you'll see exactly what's going on. But these brake pads are just seized into this caliper bracket. Fight with it a little bit here, but it comes out. And look at that thing. Next you want to take the caliper bracket bolts out. Again, get the big ratchet out. Makes light work of it. And pop this thing out of place. Set the bolts off to the side. Yeah, take a look at that. So let's get this rotor out of here. Put that where it goes. Junk. This tool is pretty cool. I think we picked that up on Amazon. It works great for cleaning up around these studs where they're really hard to get to. You want to make sure you got a good true surface on these hubs to where the rotors sit on them. And I like to go through with that tool and then follow it up with a little die grinder, a little flap attack action here. You can see all those little layers of rust. Next, we're going to do a little unboxing video. Hey, guess what this is? It's a rotor. But the big note here is you can see all the oil all over these things. And every rotor comes this way. No, that's not a mistake. I am putting it on backwards because I'm going to go through with some brake clean and a little towel here and wipe this thing down. Make sure I get any of that oil, and you can see there's still some dust and debris from the machining process left on it here in a second when I get done. Yeah, that's all junk that would have got embedded in your brake pads. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip it over the right way, start with a clean rag, and do the same on this side. Again, oils, debris, nasty stuff you don't want embedded in your brakes. It'll just cause problems down the road. So here I'm going to move on, clamp the caliper bracket in the vise. You can see all that rust and debris in there. Now what I like to do is use a cutoff wheel and get in there and clean that all up. Now I'm not trying to remove any material. Yeah, you see some sparks flying, that's going to happen. But mainly I'm getting all that rust and debris and brake dust, everything just cleaned out of there and cleaned up. That way the brake pads and the hardware have a nice home to live in. So here's everything cleaned up. You can see it looks pretty good. Yeah, nice. I'm going to go ahead and do unboxing video number 2. Wait a minute. Something's wrong here. Now most brake pads are going to come with new hardware, but in recent years, companies have started excluding the hardware. So make sure you check if you're needing new hardware. It's usually recommended. I didn't pay attention. These ones don't come with new hardware, so looks like I'm reusing the old ones. Not a big deal. Just a little bit of time. Make sure you get them cleaned up well. So one thing I like to do is take and put a real light coat of brake grease on those surfaces that I just cleaned up. Because they are bare metal, they'll eventually rust, but the brake grease will hopefully keep that from happening for a while. Ooh, nice noises. Anyway, putting the caliper bracket back in place, a little bit of blue Loctite on there just to prevent anything from happening. Get everything lined up. That can be a little tricky without a third hand, but, you know, managed to make it work. Again, just go back and get the bigger ratchet out. Hammer these things home. Torqued. And torqued. Yeah, perfect. Now you want to make sure you're putting brake grease on your brake pads, anywhere that they make contact with the hardware or any of the mounting surfaces, just to keep them from squeaking and let them live their best life. You shouldn't have to hammer these things in. They should pretty well just slide in. Maybe a little love tap here and there, but otherwise just pop right into place, and they should move freely once they're in there. Now if you don't have a caliper compressor tool like I have, you can always use a C-clamp, sometimes just a pry bar and pushing against it. There's a million different ways to accomplish the same goal. But at the end of the day, all you're looking to do is compress this piston back into the housing. It helps to put your old pad in there, just so you're not trying to press against the edge of the piston. Start pumping away. There we go. Now again, with the cleaning and lubing, your slides, you want to make sure those things are good and clean, get all the old lube and everything off there. And then I'm a firm believer in there's no such thing as too much in this scenario. I like to put a little dab on the end especially, that way there's plenty kind of smushed into the bore. And again, note that that top slide has the little rubber bush on it. So back again with the larger ratchet. Go ahead and send these things home. And torque them to spec, of course. All right, so that's one side down. Pretty much just copy and paste onto the other side. I'll go ahead and knock that out real quick. And then we're going to move on to bleeding the brakes. Now if that's all you're needing to do, throw the wheels back on, torque the lug nuts down, take it for a test drive and bed these brakes in, and you're all set. I'm going to do a brake flush today, hopefully. These bleeder screws are pretty rusty. I live in the Midwest, so I'm used to it. But I doubt this brake fluid has ever been touched since new, and I want to get this thing flushed out. Just a good practice, good maintenance. Not something you have to do with this repair. So, like I said, we're going to get this thing on the ground, and we're going to move on to doing the brake flush. Before I forget, as long as I got this thing on the ground, I'm going to go ahead and torque these lug nuts. And you'll notice I'm going to leave the caps off because I am going to go bed these brakes in after this is all said and done. And I'll hit them with the torque wrench again just to make sure. Then I'll button it all back together. Just good practice. So. Now for this part I'm going to be using, well, a BG flush machine. You can use anything for this step. It's kind of like compressing the brake calipers. About any tool will get the job done here. Even if it's just having somebody jump in the car, pump the pedal up, and you crack the bleeders loose a little bit at a time and keep topping the fluid up. They make other kinds of machines, kind of DIY stuff. Obviously, if you're only doing this every so often, it doesn't make sense to put a lot of money into a tool to do it. So, something to keep in mind. I'm just using this because, well, it makes it a lot easier. There's our little guy back here. Just starting on the rear, work my way to the front, let him run for a little while till it comes out clear. That's not too bad looking. I've seen a lot worse than that, but as we go here, you'll see this turn from that kind of golden brown color to a nice clear color. Here it's starting to clear up some. Hopefully I can string these together enough to where you'll see it go from dark to light. Now it's really coming out clear. That's looking good. See the difference of that fluid right there. Nice. Clean up a mess before I put everything back together. Ideally, you want to do this with the wheels off so you don't make a mess all over the wheels, but it's my car. I can do it this way if I want to. There we go. Just keep moving around. Do all three of the other ones. This will be good to go. Now, the main reason that you want to do a brake flush as a maintenance item is that brake fluid is hygroscopic, which means that it attracts moisture, and over time that moisture can build up in the system. What's moisture do when it gets hot? It boils. That can be problems when you're trying to use your brakes. Front brakes are done. Brake flush is done. Now it's time to go drive this thing and bed those brakes in. Little pro tip, before you try moving this, make sure you pump up your pedal. If you don't, you're gonna pull away, and the first time you go to hit the pedal, you're gonna have nothing because your brakes aren't fully adjusted in. So keep that in mind. So the way that I like to bed brakes in is usually I do several long, kind of softer stops. I don't come all the way to a stop. Usually it's like 30-ish to 40-ish miles an hour, depending on the circumstances, and if I can go that fast, and just long, kind of sustained stopping. And what I'm trying to do is just get some heat built up in the rotors themselves. It'll help to burn off any of that oil or anything that's left on the rotors themselves. And like I said, just get a little bit of heat built up in them. Then after I'm done with that part of it, I usually go for some more aggressive braking. And what that's going to do is actually burnish the pads into the rotors themselves. And here in a second, we'll start with that process. So just driving a few blocks now, letting them cool off. And here in a minute, we'll start with the hard braking. You don't have to go hard. You don't have to put yourself through the windshield to this thing. But you do want to do some pretty aggressive braking. Let those things really burnish themselves in. And now's as good a time as any. Not bad. So I'll keep doing that, and once I get back to the shop, we'll get back to you. Remember earlier when I said I was going to retorque them? Now's the time. All's good there. As simple as that. Like I said, you don't need all the fancy tools. You definitely don't need a lift. I've done this before with blocks of wood and on a gravel driveway. Not a big deal. Whatever your circumstances, you can get this done yourself, save a lot of time, save a lot of money, and be back on the road. So like I said, I hope this helps you out in getting your car back on the road, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.